What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I'm Isaiah, and I invite you yet again to grab a chair, a snack, and a beverage, and let me talk at you for a minute. Today I've got a game that is unlike anything I've ever talked about before in terms of theme. So today we're going to be talking about this game, Tusk, from Wessex Games. This game has been around for a while. It was brought to my attention by one of my patrons, Bill, aka Painting More Orcs, over on Instagram. Go check him out. He's an absolute machine. But he's been playing this game and talking about it in the Discord for a little while now, and I finally just kind of looked it up, and this rule set is on Wargame Vault. This PDF is like $3.84. It's very, very, very cheap, and it's very, very short and direct and straight to the point as far as gameplay and mechanics and stuff. So let's get into it. Well, one more quick thing before we do that. I'd like to take a second, throw a big old fat daddy shout out there to Manning the Fort, the newest member of the Patreon over there at Patreon. At the Iron Tier, man, thank you so much for the support, dude. It is massively appreciated. Welcome to the party. And then, without any further ado or gilding of the lily, let's discuss Tusk. So in its original inception, it is a game of cavemen hunting mammoths. Now, in this particular PDF, there are two other modules of play that have been added into the game. They are cavemen against dinosaurs, which we know isn't a thing, but it's such an epic Hollywood trope that why not allow us the opportunity to play that out on the table. And then the other is kind of a Victorian H.G. Wells Lost Earth explorers going up into the forbidden or the lost world and finding these dinosaurs. I will probably do that as with modern miniatures, doing it because I just have one of those. I don't really have a lot of really any Victorian miniatures, and so I don't know that I'll do it that way, but I'll use the rules and probably with modern people and see how it goes. Now, up front, be aware the game is written and designed with 6 to 15 millimeter models in mind. But you can absolutely play it with 20 or 28 millimeter. I'm going to be playing it with 28 millimeter models and just converting the centimeters to inches. So anywhere it says centimeters in the book, we put that to inches, and I think it's going to be a grand old time. But if you are one who wants to play exactly the way things are written, it is 6 or 15 millimeter miniatures, and those are produced by, I want to say, Irregular Miniatures is the company that they mentioned that produces the like official. But there's lots of cavemen. I just ordered a bunch of cavemen from North Star. The North Stars. I think they're actually cobblestone miniatures maybe, but I found them on the North Star Military Figures website. So to get started, you need your play area, you need a mammoth to hunt, and you need your bases of hunters. Now those come in a few different options. There are hunters with spears or axes, so hand weapons. There are hunters with bows and slings. There are fire makers. There's Og the Hero, and there are dogs. All of those should be based on whatever scale you're playing at, those should all be on the same size bases. When you're getting everything together, you have 10 points with which to build your hunting party. Spear or hand weapons are 2, ranged weapons are 3, fire makers are 4, Og the Hero costs 3, and dogs cost 1. Once you have everything, all your stuff picked out, and you look at the scenario, which the basic scenario starts with your guys on an edge, I want to say, and then the mammoth kind of in the middle. There's a turn sequence. So the fires progress. Players roll a d6 for their action points. The hunters move. The fire makers light fires. Your ranged attacks go, your melee attacks go, and then your beasts get to roll on their reaction tables, and then you check for deaths due to fire. So action points are what the action economy of the game is based off of, and you get a random number of them each turn, which I like because that means that you're going to probably get put into some situations eventually where you have to make some tough choices about what to do with your forces. And I always like being put into those kinds of situations by a game. Those action points can be used to move bases for 1 point. They can be used sometimes to increase the movement distance of a base, and fire makers can use them to light fires for 1 point. But they are not used, it seems, for combat. At least if they are, they're not. It's not listed right there in the actions points section. Next, we come to fire. Now, fire seems a pretty relevant and pivotal part of the hunting process, and it seems really, really interesting the way you could potentially use the fire to hunt the beast. So fire makers can place fire on a turn that they did not move, they had an action point spent on them for it, and they roll a 5 or a 6 on a d6. If they succeed, then they can place a marker, which is 25 millimeters. Yep, 25 millimeters, or in the case of I'm going to be using inches, so 2.5 inches. It needs to be marked somehow with lit and burnt out. I will probably be using a piece of little cotton fluff like you would use for smoke off of black powder games or rifles or something like that, what I would use for silver bayonet. That's what I'll use to mark the burn side, and then I'll just pick it up when it's done, so then I'll probably be using like a one-sided marker. If you succeed, you can place that anywhere adjacent to the fire maker base. At the beginning of every turn, you have to roll some type of directional dice to figure out the wind direction, and existing fire markers are flipped to their burn side, and then new fire markers are placed adjacent to the burned out one in the direction that the wind is blowing. So the wind will blow the fire around the table, and that part of the mechanic seems like a tremendous amount of fun. Now that spread is checked by a dice roll. So on a 1 or 2, the fire goes out and the fire marker's flipped over. On a 3 or 4, the fire remains but no fire spreads. And on a 5 or a 6, the fire spreads and you place an additional marker adjacent. Fires may not cross areas which are burned out or on the water or marshes or over cliffs. It may partially occupy a burned out water, marsh, or cliff area, but only the part of the marker not over such areas counts as actually being on fire. Any base that is on fire at the end of a turn is destroyed and removed from play. There's no that we as a race have not yet figured out the mechanics of stop, drop, and roll. Movement is very straightforward to the point where you could actually just create some sticks for the game if you really wanted to. So all types of humans move 5 centimeters or 5 inches if you're playing at a larger scale. Dogs move 15 centimeters or inches. And the mammoths can move 8 inches per turn when they get to move. Humans and dogs, if you spend an extra action point on them beyond the one that you need to move them, can move an additional 5 inches. You cannot willingly move into fire or over a cliff. We're not the brightest, but we're brighter than that. We come to missile combat, which is at a range of 10 centimeters or 10 inches. Every base that's firing fires, and they roll 2d6. If they roll a 12, the beast is killed outright. Otherwise, it will get a roll on the beast reaction table. Close combat is somewhat similar. You can attack at a range of 2 centimeters or 2 inches. Still roll a 2d6 roll. And if you get a 10, 11, or 12, you have a better chance of killing it in close combat, but you also have a better chance of getting squished. It's killed outright. Otherwise, it will get rolls on the reaction chart during the beast activation. When Og the hero swings, you only roll 1d6. And on a 4 up, it's dead. But on a 1 to 3, Og gets squished. So that's fun. Irrespective of other results, the beast will roll 2d6. On a 8 or more, a randomly determined base within 2 centimeters of the beast is killed and removed from play. This roll is made even if none of the bases within 2 centimeters have attacked the beast. So, there's a good chance somebody's going to get squished regardless, just as it panics and flails about. I like that. I like that little piece of mechanicry right there. Mechanicry. That's a thing now. It's a word. Trust me. Once all of your caveman bases and dog bases have activated, we then go to the beast's reaction. Each beast will be rolled for only once per turn on the reaction table. And there's conditions. So there are, let me see if I can get this. So there's this table here, and we read that table from left to right. And the first one of those conditions across the top that is applicable is the section of the chart that you roll for. So the first one is there's fire within 7 centimeters. If that's not the case, then if there was close combat. If there are dogs that are less than 2 centimeters, then missile combat, then hunters less than 12, and then hunters that are more than 12. And it's a D6 roll, and then there's letters. There's a little code that has a legend underneath. So W is for withdrawal. The elephant or the mammoth will move half of its max movement, rounded down, away from the nearest human, dog, or fire base. Next option is F, which is for flight, which is a max movement away from nearest humans, dogs, or fires. If that movement is impossible because of a cliff or something like that, I assume, then then you would treat it as an attack result for the beast. Next is a panicked flight, so a PF, and it is a max movement directly 180 degrees away from the nearest human, dog, or fire. Any human or dog that is in the way of this movement is trampled to death, but if the mammoth panics and runs through the fire, then it is killed. It burns up. A is for attack, which is a maximum move distance towards the nearest human or dog base, followed by an attack roll, I assume. And lastly, G is for graze, which is a 1 centimeter or inch movement in a random direction, which is determined by the wind, avoiding water, marshes, cliff edges, or human or dog bases. Next, we come to terrain effects, which are fairly minimal for the game. Water and marshes will half all movement for all bases. Beasts become stuck in marshes, and therefore humans get a +2 to close combat rolls against beasts in marshes. And cliffs and pits are fatal to anything that falls in or over them. Everything else is just for set dressing, just visual joy. And that's, we're 7 pages in? That's all the rules. From there, we get a couple of different scenarios. He gives a solo as well as a multiplayer scenario for each of the different settings. So the basic ones are the hunt, which is just you and your cavemen out there hunting some mammoths. We have the prehistoric one, so this gives you a reaction table to fight against either a brontosaurus or a T-Rex, but it is still just kind of a hunt it down type of mission. And then we have the Victorian adventures. Now here you get a new group of people to fight with. You have adventurers, stalwarts, rabble, Sir Harry, who is kind of like your Ogre, and then you get artillery, which is pretty cool. You're just dragging a cannon through the jungle, I guess. So your adventurers are kind of your starring characters. They all carry guns, and they can all act as fire makers. Stalwarts are brave, regular soldiers. They all carry guns. Rabble are native porters, scared soldiers, or terrified citizenry. And even if carrying firearms, they are too scared to use them. They fight in close combat, though, but with a -2 on their die roll. So they always need a 12 to get a kill. Sir Harry is, as I mentioned, the equivalent of Ogre. And then we have gun and artillery fire. Guns have a range of 12, artillery up to 20. Guns kill beasts on 10, 11, 12. Artillery rolls 1d6, kills on a 5 or 6. Beasts shot at by guns or artillery are eligible to roll in the fire reaction column with a +2 on the die roll, treating the closest shooting base as the nearest base for determining panic flight results. And then again, we have a solo as well as a head-to-head mission for this, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. I have ordered cavemen, as I mentioned earlier, but as I'm waiting on them to get here, I may go ahead and give a try with my little modern reskin on the Victorian thing, using just kind of some modern models that I have. I've got lots of lizard men, so there may be like a T-Rex with another lizard dude riding him in the Lost World, because there were lizard people in the Lost World. I remember that distinctly from the television show. If you want to play at the 6 to 15 millimeter range, again, miniatures are available from irregularminiatures.co.uk, and that's Tusk. Quick, simple. I really like the fire mechanic, and for $384, I think this is going to be a banger. So final thoughts, obviously, as I've already mentioned, price point is on point at less than $5. The rules seem simple and straightforward, but especially with things like fire, it seems like it can create some pretty interesting situations. Also with the fact of you have a random amount of bases that you'll be able to activate in a given turn and may not be able to use all of what you have. So that's going to require adding another label of planning and consideration that you as the player have to experience, especially if you're playing the solo scenarios. You still have to consider it in the multiplayer, but especially in the solos. Now, if you have modern models, you can play the Victorian thing. If you have Victorian or Cowboys or whatever, you can play those characters in that setting. If you don't, then you may have to, buy some cavemen, find a nice size. I'm going to be looking for one of the mammoth, hard rubber toys. I went and checked Hobby Lobby the other day. They had lots of dinosaurs. They didn't have that. I will probably use some of my Seraphon models from my Lizardman army for my T-Rex. And I may go get a Brontosaurus at some point. But model requirements are pretty slim. You need 4 to 6 models probably. And terrain requirements are very, very minimal. It's trees, rocks, your basic outdoor wilderness stuff that most of us already have laying around. So I love that. Anytime there's a game with, minimal terrain requirements, that's always a good thing for me. So I think Tusk is going to be a lot of fun. Now there's another game called Paleo Diet that is the same kind of genre game, like Stone Age, mammoth hunting type of game, that I'm also probably going to be looking in at some point. But we'll talk about that when that point gets here. For today, we're out of time. That's the end of our conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in, hanging out, letting me talk at you for a few minutes about Tusk from Wessex Games. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day.